Hey guys, Fourfinger here, and sorry for taking so long with putting out a build guide for One Divine Monk. Now in the background you can see the hardest difficulty Arbiter of Ash. It has 30 million HP and it's still, doable. You do have to do one phase overall when it comes to the Rind phase or the Ball phase, but you can do all of the endgame content with no big issues. Now the damage is decent, but one thing I don't really quite like when you have a lower damage is the knockbacks. Because when you have crazy amounts of investment into Monk, you can just kill bosses in like 2 seconds. But now, right now with One Divine, it takes a little bit, and because we hit so many times and we crit all of the time, it just keeps pushing the boss all over the place. And I don't think that feels too amazing. So you can probably remove that from the tree, as I'll talk once we get into the skill tree section of the video. Now I'm just gonna skip ahead so you can see that it is like doable, and yeah, that's like everything on One Divine. I'm gonna show you how the gear comes together, and I forgot to turn off my hardcore filter, so this is the full drops from the Arbiter. Anyway, let's go into the skills. So just before we go into our skill gem setup, I just wanted to explain how critical strikes work in Path of Exile 2. And I've noticed a lot of people still don't get how Eye of Winter works. This is not 10% extra crit on what you already had, it's not even 10% more. This actually gets added on top of your base. Now why is this important? Because base can be scaled by all other sources of increased critical hit chance. So if you find a stave that has 14% crit, they can roll up to 15, or if you find a Gothic stave it can go up to 16.5, but we only need 14. So if you get 14 from the stave and then one more from the skill tree, which you get from the struck true node, and then you get 10% from the Eye of Winter, for the bosses you're pretty much running 25% base crit, because you're always going to be using Elemental Invocation, which is already running Eye of the Winter, meaning you're always going to have this base. And then if you have 300% increased crit chance, you're pretty much guaranteeing every single hit to be a critical strike. Now this is really great, but I like to get a little bit more increased crit chance on top of it, even though it's not going to help our bossing whatsoever. For the trash packs, we're not going to be using Eye of Winter, which means our base crit is going to be 15% in this scenario. So if you have 300% increased, it gets us to 60%. But what I like to do is I like to get it to 62.5, and then when you get super critical, it reduces you down to 50%, which in return gives you 100 crit multi, which also gets killed by the weapon crit multi. So if you have 2 critical damage bonus on the weapon, this will also work on this gem as well. So you can get like 150% crit multi on this gem, while only losing 20% of the crit, which you basically won't need anyway, because once we run ambush, it's going to double it, making it every first hit on a full HP minion. I mean, as long as the enemy has 100% HP, it's going to be a guaranteed crit. And because we're running so much crit multi and have so much damage, it's pretty much gonna one-shot everything in your maps. Now, I haven't been using this in the videos because this is more like a little bit later setup. You probably need like around 4 to 5 divines so you can get all the jeweler orbs and stuff. But keep this like general idea of what the sweet spots are for the crit later on. Because this is usually what I aim for. 14% crit on the quarter stave, 1 from the tree, 10 from the Eye of the Winter, and then we get 317% increased critical chance, making us always crit on bosses and always crit with Stormwave on full HP minions on maps, one-shotting them because we have so much crit multi. Now one more thing that synchronizes really well and why I love Monk overall is Sunder my enemies, because we're using all different types of elemental damage. Imagine if you had to get boss to 0 for all the resistances, because if you don't, pinnacle bosses have 75% elemental res, which means if you have no pen or no reduction to enemy res, you only do 1/4 of your damage. But with this, because we're always critting on bosses, it doesn't matter if our damage is fire, cold, lightning, it's always gonna be it's on 0%, no reductions whatsoever. So hopefully that makes sense when it comes to critical strikes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll be happy to answer. Let's just go into the skill gems now. So when it comes to our skill gem setup, keep in mind you can kill all of the pinnacle bosses on 4 to 5 links, and everything that you've seen in the last video was done on a One Divine budget, but I've decided to put the remaining links so you guys know how to scale it once you have more currency. Now when it comes to remaining Ascendancy picks, you go for the Lead Me to Grace, you don't have to worry about Spirit if you have a decent chest. Then you go for the I Shall Rage, more damage, more chance to inflict elemental ailments, really good. We already said why Sunder my enemies is amazing, because you don't have to worry about resistances whatsoever on enemies. And if you have any issues freezing the bell, you can get Time the Blizzard instead, but honestly with this much damage you probably don't have to worry about it. And the reason why I go for this route instead is for more shock magnitude, which increases our damage further instead of just getting chill. You know, I just prefer the extra damage here. With that being said, for Unbound Avatar we're running the usual Fire, Cold and Lightning Mastery, which each give you an extra 0.1 second, and then Persistence scales them to 1.14 and gives you a little bit more from the base, so you go from 10.2 to 14.12. Tempest Flurry is pretty much our support for the Tempest Bell. It's not meant to be doing damage, it's just meant to be supporting this. So we do Martial Tempo, we attack faster, means we can put the bell faster. Rage, this is pretty much giving us more melee damage, attack damage, which is basically a 7th pseudo-link for the bell. You have Practice Combo, which makes us also drop bells faster, because sometimes we can build 2. And Rising Tempest, this 100% works with the Elemental Invocation, I have tested it. So basically, because we only do this on bosses anyway, it's always gonna be giving us 36% more elemental damage. And we are not doing this to scale the damage on Tempest Flurry, where technically we are, but just so we can inflict elements, basically. We don't care about its damage, we just want it to be high enough to inflict Ignite, Shock and Chill. That's on the bosses, that's pretty much why. When it comes to Ignition, because we are running Immolate on our bell, which does 30% of damage as extra fire at no cost mana multiplier, which means this is an amazing gem, 30% extra damage, because we don't have to worry about resistances, it's straight up 30%, and it has no multiplier for mana, makes it amazing. So this just guarantees that boss is almost always ignited. You can, with higher build gear investment, you don't need this, you're probably gonna have Ignite up anyway, but this just makes sure that boss is ignited because the bell will not be able to ignite. That's pretty much it. Now for the Storm Wave, we are running Primal Ornament, more damage. Heft is one of those interesting support gems that works really well until you start stacking Hands of Wisdom gloves, and any other sources that give you a lightning damage to attacks will not be scaled by Heft. But it's going to do what Heft does. It does not work like Heavy Swing, because it pre-conversion scales the physical damage, which means it's also gonna scale lightning damage, because we're using Storm Wave, which converts 80% of it, and it's also gonna scale any other damages of extra S, because as you can see here in the tooltip, if I put it off and on, it's gonna be scaling both physical, of course, cold and lightning. And cold gets scaled from extra S, of course, lightning gets scaled from the Storm Wave, but you'll notice that Fire 1 doesn't scale because only source of fire damage we have is from damage to attacks, and that does not get increased by Heft. So if you get like in a late game version of this, you would probably replace Heft. You can get mobility in because you'll have crazy amounts of damage, so you'll just want to move faster, so mobility might be a good replacement. And when it comes to Heavy Swing, you might notice it does not work the same way. It's not pre-conversion, it literally just scales your fist damage. It's not gonna be changing your elemental damage whatsoever. So yeah, keep that in mind. That's why some people are using it on Bell, not knowing that this does not work on after conversion on the Bell, which makes it really bad support gem. You should not be using this ever on a monk. What else? We have Ambush, as we said before. We get exactly 50% crit after the reduction of super critical, so we always crit on full HP. And then we get this, gives us, if you can see here, we have 672, and if you remove this 100%, it goes down to 543, which means it also gets scaled by the weapon to critical damage bonus. Really nice. Tempest Bell. Now this is our main damaging source, and you later on you want to get this to a highest level possible that your mana can sustain. So if you have a lot of mana, you can go probably a few levels higher, but every 3 levels I think you get an extra hit on the bell and a bunch more damage, like 12% I think per level, which makes it really good to scale. And you can get levels by either getting the jewel from the Arbiter or by getting a weapon that has +7 to skills, and that's really good. Even some people don't understand. Some people might be like, well, good luck playing with +7 because your skills are gonna be costing like thousands of mana. If you don't already know that you're gonna play this build with that weapon, you can just instead get Tempest Flurry on level 12, Storm Wave on level 12 before you use the Jeweler Orbs, and then when you put that weapon on, it's still going to be 19, while all the other skills that benefit from it will still benefit from it. Bell will still get 7 levels, Wind Dancer will still get 7 levels, Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, all of those other skills will be scaled. You have no downside, you would just have to make you kind of plan ahead, and not run like 27 level Tempest Flurry, but instead run level 12, it gets increased by 7, it's only 19. Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, highest level possible you can sustain. We have overabundance, so we can keep spamming it every time. We hit like 2 or 3 times, depending how much the practice combo procs. We place down the bell, we pop invocation, rinse and repeat. So rotation is pretty much, you hold down Tempest Flurry, not letting it go. You use Q, E, Q, E, Q, E, and that's it. That's your rotation when it comes to bosses. And when it comes to maps, you'll have one button. This is your map rotation. It's really simple to play, simple to understand, but you know, it is what it is. Soul Thief, this is kind of a requirement to not go out of mana. If you invest in stuff like conservative casting and maybe Deep Trance, you can, on Megalomaniacs, you can probably go without it and get one more extra damage link. But honestly, I just love having it for now, and I'll see how we scale it in the future. Concentrated effect, this is fine, especially once we remove... Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to say before. You probably want to remove those 4 nodes. If you don't have crazy damage, this knockback just is not worth it. So if you remove 4 of those, you can just get more points in a crit, or you can even get some, I don't know, extra energy shield on stuff like this, or here, whatever you want, whatever your build needs. But this just doesn't feel good unless you kill bosses in like 2 builds. So even though extra freeze buildup is decent to have on bosses, it's not a must. You already have crazy damage, and if you proc the Unbound Avatar, you don't really need those. Keep that in mind. Quantity effect, like I said, this is 40% more damage, and without knockback, it's going to be just a great multiplier with no mana cost. Close combat, 25% more damage. I just don't really love the cost multiplier here, it's 1.4, but there's not too many great choices left. So even though it's a little bit more mana cost on the belt, it's decent damage in return. As we said before, this is straight up 30% more damage, really nice. Elemental Invocation, this is pretty much what you use to make the belt do the damage. So before I was running Ball Lightning with Scattershot, but I already knew that Scattershot doesn't shotgun mobs, but I just thought for some reason it did shotgun belt because bells got destroyed so quickly. But at the end of the day, I think the best way is to run Eye of the Winter plus Chain, Deceleration, Scattershot, and Inspiration, which probably isn't even needed, but there's nothing else you wanna put here, because with so much mana leech, especially with higher damage, you won't really need this, because 40% of the bell will still remain physical. Oh yeah, I just wanted to explain when it comes to bell. You have Tempest Bell, of course, it has hits, it does impact damage, which is full physical, plus anything that you have from like adds to. And then you have the main damaging swords, which is Shockwave. Because we're gonna be inflicting both Chill, Ignite, and Shock, this is 90% more damage on the bell already. 60% of that will be converted to Lightning, Cold, and Fire, which when they get like, because you can't convert more than like 100% of the conversion, means it's going to be 20 Fire, 20 Cold, 20 Lightning. And as we said before, we really don't care what elemental type it is. And 40% of it will be physical, which will in turn make us do like decent lead from the Soul Thief. That's why I said before, I'm not sure why people would be running even heavy swing on this. It's only 40% of your damage. That does not get increased by... Bosses also have some armor and stuff like that. There's really no point in running this on a bell. Really bad support gem. Here, one thing that you could also think, the Scattershot is pretty much just for extra projectiles from the Eye of Winter. It's not gonna make 3 of Eye of Winter, it's just gonna fire up 2 more projectiles. There's nothing else that I would put here. Some people like to put Impetuous, but honestly every time I put Bell and press C, it's already gonna fill my next E, so I don't really need Impetuous. If for any reason you do struggle with it, you probably don't inflict ailments enough, so you either need more damage or whatever it is, but if you do struggle with that, I guess you can run Impetuous here instead. That's more than fine. We have Ghost Dance with Fast Forward, pretty much just makes us get stacks faster, and when we get hit we recover ES, you already know how this works. Grim Fist. You run Clarity and Precision here, although you don't need them, so if you have a little bit worse chest and not enough Spirit, those two are not a must, but they are helpful. Wind Dancer, usual, Maim and Blind. When something hits you, it's slowed and it's blinded, so it has a less chance to hit you for the next time. When it comes to Heralds, I hope everybody already knows by now, you can chain Heralds together, because Herald of Lightning cannot shock, but it can freeze. You make it do more cold damage, even though this is a damage reduction, we go only from 11 to 8.8, we make it so we have a lot more cold damage, and then that cold damage has more chance for freeze buildup, and because it's almost always going to be killing stuff in the maps, it's almost always keeping the Ice Bite up, so giving us extra 35% damage as a cold when mapping makes it really nice. And because this kills a frozen enemy, it will then in return activate Herald of Ice, which will do the opposite. Instead of scaling the freeze, we are going to be scaling shock. So we make it do less cold. Again, it's a damage loss, but makes us do shock and shock chance. And when it kills shock enemies, it gives us 35% more as extra lightning. And then finally magnified effect. So if the mobs are close enough together, those two keep chaining. This will kill a frozen enemy, and then it will activate this. This will kill a shocked enemy, and then it will activate this. So as long as the mobs are close to each other, it's gonna be making a chain reaction. That's pretty much how that works. So that's pretty much the skill gems, and I'm just gonna go talk over the last few things, and that should be it. So yeah, I probably forgot to mention a bunch of things, so feel free to ask in the comment section, but one thing that I did get asked before is if chain works on a bell, and it 100% does, because I've tested this in a map with one projectile. If you place bell on one side, and then you hit a mob on the left with a projectile, it will hit the mob, and then run to the bell, so it 100% works. And the reason why this is important is if you have no pierce, fork, or chain on your projectiles, and if the first one hits the boss, it will not be able to hit the bell to proc the shockwave. This just guarantees that any projectile that hits either bell or boss will proc the shockwave, which is really important. When it comes to gear, we're running the same gear from the last video. It's everything here is one divine word, and you pretty much want to get as much energy shield and life as possible from defenses, and then you scale resistances to a cap with attributes requirements so you have enough. If you have some free slots to get some more mana in, it's helpful. It gives you more mana and more mana regen, because more mana you have, more it regens. For the amulet, we don't need spirit because it doesn't do anything because of lead me through grace. We cannot get spirit through equipment, but you can get it through jewels. Keep that in mind. If you had like darkness jewel with spirit, it will work on top of this, which is kind of not sure if intended, but it does work. But reason why I went for this amulet, it just hit really good affixes. Like defense wise, attributes, chaos res, everything is really good. When it comes to weapons, this weapon would be a lot better with crit damage bonus runes in it, because you should probably try to use Path of Building. If you want, I can make a video about it as well. But if you have a weapon that has crazy amount of flat fees, not increased, then increased physical damage runes have way more value. Because here we already have 139% increased fizz damage. Getting 40% on top of it will not do a huge job compared to a crit damage bonus would. And also elemental damage will probably do more than the fizz damage in this scenario. But if you want to have certain amount of what gives you the most DPS, you can copy the items by Ctrl-C and then importing it in Path of Building, and then using the same tree you do and checking all of the boxes. Like I said, I'll probably make a guide about that as well. And then you can see what's the best one to sock in certain weapons. There are certain scenarios where running like one physical damage one and one crit damage bonus one is the best case. Because there's a fine line where thresholds overpass each other and give you more in return. Because they all multiply each other, and you don't want to make too much of a difference between them. You want to keep them as close as possible to get the max value. Because I'm just going to give you an example. If you had like 300% fizz, I mean 300% increased elemental attack damage, right? And then you had 300% crit multi. If you do 3 times 0.3, this would be a multiplier of 9, right? But if instead you had 2.8 here, and then 3.2 on the other side, this is going to be a bit lower. So the bigger the difference between them, I mean, if this is obvious, but the bigger the difference between them, the less value you get. So you want to try to keep all of them as close as possible. That's mostly it, I think. Like I said, I probably forgot a bunch of things. Feel free to ask. Mobilistic link is down in the description. I think I put all the links from the importance from left to right, so you can copy that as well. And yeah, you can join the Discord. Feel free to ask an extra question or two, whatever you need helping setting it up. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, and feel free to like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff.